Have you noticed how every single conversation about AI eventually circles back to Nvidia? It doesn't matter if you're talking about chatbots, image generators, self-driving cars, or even government AI policy. At some point the name Nvidia comes up, and that's because right now Nvidia isn't just a company, they're basically the oxygen tank for the entire AI revolution. But here's where it gets wild. Modular just raised $250 million to challenge that dominance. And trust me, this is not some throwaway headline. This could be one of those moments that shifts the entire trajectory of the AI industry. So let's talk about what Modular is, why this funding round matters, and how they plan to take on the trillion-dollar beast that is Nvidia. To really get why this story is so big, you first need to understand just how dominant Nvidia actually is in the AI space. Right now, if you want to train a large language model or build some kind of cutting-edge AI system, you are almost guaranteed to be using Nvidia GPUs. That's not because there are no alternatives, it's because Nvidia built not just the hardware but the entire ecosystem around it. Their secret weapon isn't just the raw power of their chips, it's something called CUDA. This is a software layer they released back in 2006, and at the time, nobody thought much of it, but what CUDA did was lock in developers. It gave them tools, libraries, and frameworks that made it super easy to program Nvidia GPUs. Over the years, it became the default way to build AI workloads. Once that happened, it didn't matter if a competitor had a chip that was technically faster, because without CUDA, the developer ecosystem just wouldn't support it. So, Nvidia has had this perfect flywheel. The hardware is great, the software makes it sticky, the developers stay loyal, and because developers stay loyal, all the big cloud companies and enterprises keep buying Nvidia hardware. It's like this endless loop, and that's why Nvidia is sitting on over $2 trillion in market cap and basically printing money every quarter. Now enter Modular, and the first thing you have to understand is Modular isn't trying to beat Nvidia at their own game. They're not saying, hey, we're going to make GPUs that are faster than Nvidia. Modular is saying something different. They're saying, why do you even need to be locked into Nvidia hardware in the first place?
The company was founded by Chris Lattner and Tim Davis. Now, Chris Lattner is a name some of you might recognize. He's one of the creators of the Swift programming language at Apple. He also worked at Tesla and Google on AI infrastructure, so he's not some random startup founder. He's been in the trenches of software and hardware for years. Tim Davis has this deep background in systems, engineering, and scaling infrastructure, so the team knows exactly where the bottlenecks are in AI today.
Their mission with Modular is to build what they call a universal AI runtime. Think of it like a translator layer for AI workloads. Instead of having to write your code specifically for Nvidia's CUDA, you can write it once in Modular's framework, and it will run on whatever hardware you want. AMD chips, Google TPUs, custom silicon from startups, you name it. The whole point is freedom and flexibility. So why is this funding round such a big deal? Because raising $250 million in one go is not just about the money, it's about the signal it sends. This is basically the investor class saying, hey, we think Nvidia might finally have some real competition. When you dig into the round, it's not just small venture firms either. These are heavyweight backers, people who usually only write checks when they see a massive opportunity. And the timing couldn't be better. Nvidia is under more scrutiny than ever. Their prices are sky high, supply is limited, and governments around the world are starting to worry about overdependence on a single US company for critical AI infrastructure. So this round isn't just about Modular getting money to build their product, it's about investors betting on a future where the AI ecosystem is no longer 100% dependent on Nvidia. Okay, so how exactly does Modular plan to pull this off? Right now, Nvidia's dominance comes from the fact that if you want to run AI workloads efficiently, you basically have no choice. Modular is trying to break that cycle by creating a software layer that makes AI hardware interchangeable. Think of it like this. Imagine if you bought an iPhone and Apple said, by the way, you can only use Apple's charging cable, Apple's headphones, Apple's apps, and everything else is blocked. That's basically what Nvidia has done with CUDA. They've locked you into their ecosystem. Modular is trying to be the adapter that says, nope, you can use whatever you want and it'll still work perfectly. That might sound like a small thing, but in the world of AI, it's huge. Because right now, every company, from tiny startups to trillion-dollar giants, is struggling to get enough Nvidia GPUs, and they're paying insane prices for them. Modular is saying, hey, what if you could use AMD or Google chips or even your own custom silicon and get the same performance? That's not just cost savings, that's a complete shift in power dynamics. And this is where it gets really interesting. If you're a developer today, you're basically chained to Nvidia. You have to learn CUDA. You have to build inside their ecosystem. That means your options are limited. If Modular can actually deliver on this promise, it means developers suddenly have a choice. And when developers have choice, the entire industry opens up. Imagine you're a startup trying to build the next viral AI app. Today, you're either waiting in line for Nvidia GPUs or paying whatever price the market demands. But with Modular, you could spin up on whatever hardware is cheapest and most available, and still hit top performance. That's like going from monopoly to free market overnight. That's why this matters so much.
For big enterprises, the story is the same. Nvidia's GPUs are great, but they're expensive and scarce. If you're running massive AI workloads across thousands of machines, even a 10% cost reduction could save you tens of millions of dollars. Modular is promising way more than that. They're saying, hey, you don't just save money, you also get resilience. You're not dependent on one supplier anymore. And in a world where supply chains are shaky, that's huge.
Now here's where things zoom out, because Modular isn't operating in a vacuum. This is part of a much bigger war going on in the AI world, the AI chip war. On one side, you've got Nvidia sitting on the throne. On the other side, you've got AMD clawing their way in with new GPUs, Intel trying to make a comeback with accelerators, Google with TPUs, Amazon building their own chips, even Apple making custom silicon. And then you've got a wave of sovereign nations like China building their own chips because they don't want to rely on US companies. So this is already a battlefield with trillion-dollar implications. The problem has always been that no matter what chip you use, you still come back to CUDA and Nvidia's ecosystem. But if Modular's universal runtime works, suddenly all those chips become fair game. AMD looks more attractive, Google's TPUs get a second life, startups can compete, and even governments could build sovereign clouds that don't rely on Nvidia. That's why this funding round matters so much. It's not just about one startup, it's about potentially unlocking an entire marketplace that's been bottlenecked for years. But let's pump the brakes for a second, because it's not like Nvidia is going to sit back and let this happen. They're not just a chip company anymore, they're the backbone of modern AI. They've got the deepest software ecosystem, the strongest developer loyalty, and decades of momentum. For Modular to succeed, they don't just need great tech, they need trust from developers and enterprises, and that's not easy to win. CUDA has been around for nearly 20 years. It's battle-tested. Developers know it works. Modular is new, unproven, and that's going to scare some people. Then there's the question of scale. Nvidia has data centers, alliances with every cloud provider, and partnerships with basically every major AI company on the planet. Modular doesn't have that yet. They're starting from zero, and scaling up from zero in this world is not easy.
And finally, Nvidia isn't dumb. They know exactly what Modular is trying to do, and you can bet they're already working on ways to reinforce the walls around CUDA. So Modular has to move fast, like insanely fast, if they want to make a dent before Nvidia finds a way to neutralize them.
But let's imagine for a second that Modular actually pulls this off. What does the world look like in 5 years? First of all, Nvidia's market share drops. They're still a giant, but no longer the only game in town. Developers suddenly have freedom. They can write their AI code once and deploy it on whatever hardware they want. The cost of building AI plummets because companies aren't stuck paying premium prices for Nvidia chips. Governments get more options to build sovereign AI systems. Startups can scale without waiting in line for GPUs. And the entire pace of AI innovation accelerates. This would be like going from one internet provider in your city to 10 overnight. Competition drives down prices, speeds go up, and everybody wins, except the monopoly that just got broken. That's the dream Modular is pitching, and that's why investors are throwing money at them. But now flip the scenario. What if Modular flames out? Well, then Nvidia's grip only tightens. Every challenger that fails reinforces the idea that you can't beat Nvidia. And that becomes dangerous not just for startups but for the entire AI industry. Prices stay sky high, supply stays limited, innovation slows down because everything is bottlenecked through one company. And when one company holds that much power, they get to decide the rules. That's not always a good thing for the rest of us.
So in a way, this isn't just about Modular succeeding. It's about whether the industry can find a way to decentralize AI infrastructure before Nvidia becomes too powerful to challenge at all.
And timing really is everything here. Demand for AI is exploding faster than supply can keep up with. Every new model, every new AI startup, every new application is fighting for the same pool of Nvidia GPUs. That's why you see headlines about companies spending billions just to secure chips. If Modular had launched 5 years ago, maybe nobody would have cared. But today, with everyone desperate for alternatives, they have a shot. And that's why this funding round hit so hard. Because it's happening at the exact moment when the industry is most open to change. So what happens next? Here's what I'm watching. Can Modular actually deliver on the universal runtime promise? It's one thing to say, hey, we'll make everything run anywhere. It's another thing to make it reliable at scale. Do developers adopt it? At the end of the day, if developers don't jump ship, nothing changes. How does Nvidia respond? Do they drop prices? Do they expand CUDA? Do they build their own version of what Modular is doing? And beyond that, watch how governments react. A lot of them are nervous about being too dependent on Nvidia. If Modular can give them a real alternative, you can bet public sector contracts could start rolling in. And that could be game over in terms of momentum. So here's the bottom line. Nvidia might still be the king of AI chips right now, but Modular just raised $250 million to take a shot at the crown. And whether they succeed or fail, this is the first real crack we've seen in Nvidia's armor. The ripple effects are going to be massive. So what do you think? Is this the beginning of the end for Nvidia's chokehold on AI? Or just another challenger that's going to fade out? Comment down below. I really want to hear your take on this story, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit subscribe, because this space is moving way too fast and you don't want to miss what happens next. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.